So moved. Second.
Move adoption.
Second.
There's an error on page 6. I believe it's CBD oil, not Clayoquot Biosphere Trust products. And there's one on page 9, Sally Moll, in her statement, it's a replication of what Margaret Morrison stated prior to what she actually did say.
Okay, that's it. Anything else? Councillor Hoare?
On page 6, there's some errors in David Smith's statement, and I was going to clean it up for comprehension. It should read, he stated that the risk of mental health issues is increased by cannabis use, especially in youth populations. He also noted that teenagers that use cannabis are particularly at risk of becoming addicted. And then towards the end, he distinguished alcohol from cannabis use and noted that it is not an issue at this public hearing. And then when it's repeated on page 9, same changes apply.
So I don't get the change. So you're talking about the last sentence, there's a change after alcohol?
No, there's missing words and incorrect words in it. So in that paragraph, they're missing the word, it should be the risk of mental health issues. It is increased by cannabis use, not youth. Also, the last line doesn't make sense without adding in that he distinguished alcohol from cannabis
Okay,
use.
got it. Perfect. Joe, are you good with that? Anything else? Okay. All in favor of those changes? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have 6.2, September 10th, public hearing minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? None on that one? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any unfinished business? None heard? Okay. No mayor's announcements. And now I have opening up the floor to the public for any input. Any questions going on in the community? Okay, none heard. Correspondence items. We have one. An invitation to the 20th anniversary celebration, September 28th at 6:30 p.m. Is anyone attending?
Yes.
Everybody, okay, good. You're not attending?
No.
Okay. No, perfect. Well, we'll see you there then. It'll be a busy week.
I believe they're looking for the mayor to speak.
Yeah, I have confirmed with Barbara Stram, and that I'll say a few words for sure. Okay, thank you. And we have a wonderful report from our fire chief. Did you want to speak to your report, perhaps? Two years in the making, so I'm happy to see this one.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, before I got here, of course, the fire department was involved in the cleanup of a Canadian Air Crane fuel spill, and subsequently a bunch of our gear was destroyed in the during that event. So the gear had since been replaced, and the district went after Canadian Air Crane to replace funds, and so we finally received the check for $22,557.91 just last week. So since all the gear had been replaced, one of the areas where we've really been lacking here is the ability to fill our own air bottles. So we rely on Subtitle Adventures, as stated in the report there. And their compressor is very aged and obsolete as far as parts, and slow to fill bottle. So what I'm requesting is the use of that reimbursement check to purchase a good used air bottle filling station.
Perfect. Any questions for the chief? Councillor Hoare?
Just for my own curiosity, is the unit the same as a compressor for scuba? Or are the SCBAs a little bit different?
Through the mayor, I'm not entirely familiar with scuba filling, although our bottles now are currently filled with a scuba machine. So I believe they are interchangeable somewhat.
Anything else? No, thank you for this. This has been one of my little pet peeves for the last year and a half since we were out of pocket for all that turnout gear, and I'm just really delighted to see what that you've decided to purchase this. 'Cause I think you found a new friend in Alberta that's been selling you some used equipment that it's been doing a great thing. 'Cause what is the cost of one of these things brand new?
Brand new, Mr. Mayor, upwards of $50,000 they generally start at. So this is a unit that I've asked them to reserve for us as a good used unit that came from industry in Alberta, and it's sitting in Vancouver right now.
Perfect. No, I really appreciate the initiative that you've shown to do this, because it's one of those things that the fire department, all the guys have been looking, what are we going to do with these tanks? So it's a great opportunity, and so thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? There's a recommendation here.
I'll move that council approve the use funds from Canadian Air Crane in the amount of $22,557.91 to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus bottle filling station.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And perhaps, Chief, you can just send maybe a letter to Canadian Air Crane, just thanking them and just let them know what you're doing with the check that isn't just going to the general coffers, and it would be appreciated.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Legislation 12.1. Public hearing report regarding bylaw number 1254, 2019, zoning amendment. Mr. Greggs, did you want to speak to that perhaps at the beginning?
Through the mayor, the item 12.1 is really the report of the public hearing. So I think initially it's just really there for council's information and consideration. The next item would be where we get into the bylaw. So I think that this would be an item, just a moment where if there are any questions on the report of the public hearing or clarification, I guess that would be appropriate.
Okay. Okay then, so I'll just kick over to 12.2, bylaw number 1254, 2019, zoning amendment for cannabis sales at 1786 Peninsula Road, third reading. Okay, so I think probably I would like to hear from everybody their comments, so I'll start with Councillor Cole.
So I've wrote things down so I don't get off track. I normally just speak off the cuff, but I don't want to waste anyone's time going sideways. So if I have my eyes down, it's only because I'm trying to keep succinct. I have concerns about retail cannabis, and these concerns are not addressed in this application. I will summarize what I have heard from the community up to and including the public hearing, and that I've spoke with the other council after the first reading prior to my initial concerns being published in the Westerly. I'll start by saying I'm not against recreational use of fully grown adults at all. To each their own, and of course I'm in support of medicinal use. My forthcoming comments are directed at the impacts of retail cannabis under the current structure of regulations in the community right now as it stands today. Today as it stands, the federal government has put the cart before the horse, and in that legalization was rolled out without proper checks and balances in place, no roadside screening device, and without a complete educational component. But what they did do well was leave the final decision to each municipality to decide for itself if, where, and when it's a proper fit in their community. Currently, no one who wants or needs it is going without. In chatting with many locals over the previous weeks, people are still going to be accessing it via their traditional venues. It can be ordered discreetly, online or over the phone, and delivered directly to your home. Purchases in store can be made as close to home as it is 24/7 healthcare access on the West Coast. That's Tofino. And people can grow their own. For those who would prefer to have more intel on types and amounts, there are many forums and educational support groups online. And with the up-and-coming pharmacy movement for CBD access, again, a greater educational component face-to-face with highly educated individuals in an in prescriptional setting. As to the concerns of one of our community members at the public hearing of fentanyl-laced cannabis as a threat to current users, as recently as this summer, there have been 0 laboratory-confirmed cases of fentanyl cannabis in Canada. And the thought that it is going to decrease the drug deals going on in town and that our drug dealers will go away. We all know that they're not making their money on cannabis. What we risk. The same page of the federal government website that states the legal age of cannabis use is 19 also states very clearly that the detrimental effects on the brain development of youth, our youth, is until you're 26 years old. A plethora of studies spanning decades all support the current and still standing facts that the usage of cannabis between the ages of 12 and 26 increase mental health issues, such as psychosis, schizophrenia, depression, for a few, and decreases IQ in staggering numbers into double digits in chronic use and vulnerable stages. In a community already plagued with a long history of substance abuse that goes untreated, masked, and accepted for decades, introducing yet another outlet is sending a message to our youth that it's okay. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right or good for them. If I got up in the morning, had a couple glasses of wine, drove my son to school, I'd probably have a problem. So the way it's been rolled out makes it okay for people to think that that's what they can do with cannabis in the morning. As a paramedic, 40% of our calls are derived from mental health and substance abuse. To consider more access to substance that increase mental health components only compounds the far-reaching issues. Although it's not a gateway for everybody, just like everyone that enjoys a glass of wine doesn't become an alcoholic, for those that it is, it's life-altering, devastating, and completely destructive to them, their family, and loved ones. I've had many people in the community approach me with their concerns and even share with me their heartbreaking tales of downward spirals that began with cannabis use. I too have experienced this in my own family. Because of all this, if we could save even one youth from harm, then we will have done our job as council, as parents, and as humans. This is the message we need to send. We have the opportunity to show this, to slow this down until the horse catches up with the cart. We can let other communities, like communities, going down this path now, succeed and fail and learn from their lessons. And ensure ourselves for success, set us up for success in safe, controlled manner with all the right checks and balances in place. I'm the first to recognize we need to grow and move forward and not be left behind, but not at the risk or expense of our citizens, our youth, and our well-being. The question I ask many Euclusians, what does the community stand to gain? Just as in the former council's policy for considering just this, the answer was just this, and that was the net worth to the community. The answer was 9.5 times out of 10, nothing. So what the community stands nothing to gain, and the risk is real. One surprising concept I realized when I'm reminding the community to come out and be heard at the public hearing was how many folk in the community are afraid to speak up and risk complicating or damaging professional, personal, and business ties and relationships. It's great to be in a community where everyone values harmonious relationships and covets cohesion in the community. However, it's to a detriment. As such, I will add their voices to my stance, as this is why I sit in this chair and speak to what is in the whole community's best interest.
Are there any questions for any? Who would like to go next? Unless there's any questions for Councillor Cole. Okay, Councillor Kemps.
I want to commend Councillor Cole on what she just said. It kind of brought tears to my eyes, really. I fully support what Councillor Cole said. Before the public hearing, I've spoken to a lot of, I'm very close to all our youth in our community, and in speaking with a lot of parents, their concerns, and I just don't want this to seem like we're condoning it. This is not what we are as a community, and I just can't sit up here and let this pass. And I just totally support what Councillor Core said. Thank you.
Councillor McEwen.
I'm not speaking in general terms. I'm speaking to this particular applicant and this particular bylaw. For such a contentious topic, I'm surprised more people did not come out to the public hearing. There were a total of 13 in the audience and only 4 of which spoke, which leads me to think that maybe they don't care if it passes or not passes. So when I did talk to people for their opinion prior to the public hearing, surprisingly, most of the people I talked to did not see a problem as long as it was a responsible applicant that would open the cannabis retail. And it is unfortunate that the federal government made cannabis legal before ensuring some of the checks and balances were in place, such as roadside detection units, and it's forced local councils to give the okay before the Liquor Control Board will give approval. Mr. Hansen is a very credible applicant. He lived here for many years and continues to do business here at the Lodge and the Cold Wine and Beer Store. He has years of experience operating a liquor store here and in Port Alberni, which is also a controlled substance. The Liquor Control Board has completed the financial integrity checks and security screenings as a form of pre-approval. Page 24 of the council package outlines the amenities he is proposing for a new pedestrian footpath, 10,000 toward future off-site pedestrian improvements and landscaping. The building will be renovated and either altered or relocated, or he needs to obtain a development variance permit to address the encroachment issue. He has obtained signatures of approval from 108 people, 92 of whom are locals, as well as letters of support from most of the neighbors, not all. And I really do like the future plans he has for that area, and I see it as a great improvement over what it looks like now. My first thought was not to rush into approving this type of business, but I think it will take quite some time for all the boxes to be checked before moving adoption of this bylaw, so I am in favor of giving third reading to this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Hoare.
I also commend Councillor Cole on her statements, and I'm not going to reiterate them. I've read an awful lot of scientific papers, and the effects of cannabis use on youth under 26 is phenomenal. The long-term effects are sad. We all know that youth in this town will manage to get their hands on it if there is a store, as they currently get their hands on alcohol, even though they are not supposed to buy it before they are 19. I feel there's just too many unknowns, there's the lack of checks and balances that's been commented on before. I feel there's a lot of things that need to happen before we could safely have this sort of business in our town. Also, those are generic comments, but with regards to this particular applicant, as a resident of Larch Road, I see a lot of traffic of children walking back and forth on that street, and the seniors back and forth from Forest Glen, and increasing the commercial traffic on that road would be, I think, not a good idea. Also, I found it interesting that a number of the letters in support of the business in the original application, there were then letters submitted prior to the public hearing against the application. So there were some just interesting little shifts in people's thoughts as the application moved along. So I currently am not in favor of third reading.
Oh, my opinion now. Oh, anyways, good. I think they're very. I really like the. It's a good discussion, and I appreciate everyone being very clear on their stance. I think it's really important for each other as well as community to understand. You made an interesting comment at the tail end there, Councillor Hoare, which is it's funny because I have had the same thing where people did sign that paper in the neighborhood on Larch Road, and since then I kind of said, well, they're having a second thought. You know, as commercial, the back end of Larch being on CS2, because I'm looking at the business. The rezoning application of business use, there's going to be commercial traffic. You know, 10 years from now, there'll probably be more commercial use trucks going into the back of that. So it's unfortunate. But it goes back down to what does this community want? And I think when we put the bylaw together last year or a year and a half ago regarding cannabis, we kind of gave some guidelines of how that could look. And, you know, distances, how many there could be, might not be. And I don't think that really got many people's attention, even like you just said, at the last public hearing. Nobody really showed up, 13 people, and thanks for listing those stats out. But I don't think that we've still had enough public engagement. You know, it's kind of the cart before the horse, as well as what else can we do as the elected to ensure we get the proper feel for things. And as much as I want to support, and we all want to support the applicants and with these kind of actions, it's just it's a little bit nervous for all of us because it's a big decision. It's easier to grant permission a little bit later on than go back to this. The word delayed continues to go on. I think you know, there's more public dialogue that needs to happen. And because we're not just rezoning it to from a single family home to a nightly rental here. This is why it's got a lot of people's decisions and because once a decision's made, it's pretty hard to go the other way. So I just appreciate everybody's comments. It's a tough decision, and I'm right on the fence here. You know, people asking where am I, and you know, I want to support the applicants because it is a good business venture. I think it's illegal and conforming, and then there's that social aspect of what's going to happen 12 months from now when we do the old "I told you so." Everybody's looking. You know, we're the ones making this decision, and we're the ones that are going to be taking the blunt. It's not going to be the store owner because he's legal and conforming. He was given the right. It's going to be coming back onto us. So, I like the word delayed. And I think that, you know, if we could kind of go through a process that get some public dialogue, really public dialogue, because right now it's kind of, where in our public hearing we heard 14 people come up and predominantly they were not in favor. And, 4 people that spoke. And I really think that it needs to be vetted a bit better. Did I answer the question? Not really. I'm sorry, I'm turning into a politician there, but yeah, it's not. This is not an easy one at all.
I will move recommendation 1 that the District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1254, 2019 be given third reading.
I will second it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staff recommendation for the item for bylaw 1255 is we're recommending holding another public hearing. And really this is a procedural matter, and I'll just review a little bit why that's our recommendation, what's behind that. And that the Is it not coming through? The zoning amendment bylaw, number 1255, it received first and second reading on August 13th, was the subject of a public hearing on September 9th. Can you hear me now okay? Okay. So council's now received a report of the public hearing in its agenda. The opening statements by the mayor for the public hearing and the notification that was published clearly stated, as with all public hearings, that council would receive no new submissions after the close of the public hearing, which is a pretty standard procedural thing. And so the reason for that really is the law granting council the authority to adopt and change zoning regulations, which is really found in the Local Government Act in BC, includes the requirement for council to hold a public hearing before making those changes or adopting those bylaws. The legislation and case law surrounding public hearings is such that basically all the information on which council is going to base its decision should be out there for the public to see ahead of the hearing. And the public can then, formulate an informed decision based on that information and then share their opinion with council before council makes its decision. So that's kind of the fair playing field for those decisions, if you will. So after the public hearing is closed, then council should not be receiving any new information on submissions, either verbal or written, until council has voted on that bylaw. So that new information would not have been available to the public for informing their opinions and discussions. So that sort of can knock the process a little bit by kilter. So because it might have changed their opinions and their representations to council, so therefore, if council is receiving new information, then another public hearing should be held. And I just know that this can be somewhat normal. That's okay to hold a second public hearing, that sometimes councils will ask for additional information. And an example of that would be like with a development application where in a public hearing, council hears a bunch of concern about traffic, say, and says, well, gee, I think we should have a traffic study done. Well, okay, so engineer goes and does a traffic study, and the results of that are presented to council, and then they hold another public hearing, and then people can comment on that information. And so it's fair and open, and the public has a full ability to understand and speak to it before the decision is made. So in this case, council did receive additional information after the close of the public hearing, including some direct communication with council members by email. And we don't have any reason to believe that this was a matter of somebody being sneaky. The applicant, shared some emails, but we understand it was really a mistake. And so to ensure that the rezoning bylaw is not vulnerable to challenge, another public hearing should be held to receive those submissions and allow the public an opportunity to then comment on that new information. So this report, like the last one, does lay out next steps as well. If council members have any questions, we can attempt to answer them. If any of those questions are procedural or of a legal nature, we'd suggest that council could move to go in camera to seek advice. But really, at this point, I'll see if there are any questions from council.
I'll move recommendation 1 that the District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 1255/2019 be referred to a second public hearing subject to the applicant providing the public hearing and notification fees.
I'll second that. I'm going to recuse myself, as these are my immediate neighbors, and I sit on the council of the strata right next door.
Through the mayor, I'd like to ask staff if the applicant is going to address the issue of parking. In our last public hearing package, there was a letter by a concerned neighbor about the parking issue on this particular property.
Through the mayor, we note that the applicant will need to go through a building permit process, and we're suggesting that that would need to happen before fourth reading. Part of the review with any building permit is, does it comply with the zoning? So they would need to show as on their site plan where are the parking spaces for the uses on site. So we need to be in compliance with the bylaw.
Well, I'll move that the District of Eagle Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1253, 2019 be given third reading.
Second?
Yeah, we can get her back in. Any other business? None? Question period? Any comments from the public? Just your name and address, Todd. We can get Mr. Gregg to speak to that for you, for clarity.
Sorry, just to clarify through the mayor, so is it addressed from council, do you mean, or to, could you clarify the question?
Well, I'm curious why Platinum wasn't put on the spot of whether they were going to be allowed to or not to.
So
We were voting against
you're defeated, and the Platinum, as Mr. Gregg said earlier, in just a couple, you can take a agenda with you. It's because after the public hearing, more information was presented to us, so it was. In layman terms, we actually have to go back to a public hearing because the process was a bit clouded. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, so council wasn't making a decision here on that bylaw today, but is holding another public hearing. So we wouldn't presume yet.
That's why. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, can we just explain it so that it's straight? Like, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Can I just say what happened, how it happened?
No, we'll let Mr. Gregg maybe speak to that. And
Okay.
Greg, if you wanted to explain that to Mr. Henry.
It may be some confusion because the public hearing the same day was looking at two applications, but they are separate, and so the one has come forward and council considered the bylaw and considered third reading, which was defeated. The other application, it's just tracking on a little different time. I would not presume, we don't know the outcome of that. There will be another public hearing, but
Yes. So as the group there, we denied the application for the rezoning. No, well, we're one off. So regarding that before us, although a lot of councillors made different statements to reasoning why, the actual what was before us was rezoning Mr. Hansen's property for cannabis purposes for retail. So that was defeated. And you're right, there will be another one coming up if it's the same kind of pulse that there's an it may present itself that yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. for all of us.
It was confusing. You're good.
Okay. Any other questions? Nora's got nothing for us. Okay, so closed session. Procedural motion to move in camera that the September 18th, 2019 special meeting of council be closed to the public in order to address agenda items under section 91C, E, and G, and K of the community charter. I need a seconder for that one.
I'll second it.
And all in favor? Opposed, carried, and we're in camera. We'll take a little recess and then we'll go into in camera.